Happy to be joined by former UFC title challenger and now Mr. PFL, Kenny Florian. Of course, Challenger Series going to be back tomorrow night, Friday, February 3rd. Kenny, how are you, man?
I'm well, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's good to talk to you. It's been a bit, but really exciting news about the Challenger Series. I got to ask, as someone who was part of the first season of The Ultimate Fighter, does it kind of have that Ultimate Fighter feel in terms of the opportunity that's at hand for these fighters in the Challenger Series?
Definitely. In some ways, obviously it's going to be different. They're not all living in the house wanting to kill each other. It's a much easier format,
Yeah.
one night, and that's it. And of course, you have similarities where this is an opportunity where they can change their lives,
Mhm.
and obviously a much larger contract than the Ultimate Fighter contract that I got way back when.
Yeah. Other than the money thing, there's some similarities there for sure, which is great. Obviously, week 2 we have on Friday night. What are some fighters that you're looking forward to seeing compete this year? I'm Canadian. Anthony Romero, someone I'm very excited to see compete in there. You've got Dakota Devicha. Who are some names that come to mind when you think of the Challenger Series as fighters to watch?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a few of them.
Mhm.
We have Amanda Levy,
Yeah.
who's a phenomenal jiu-jitsu practitioner. We saw her last year deal with some adversity and come back in spectacular fashion. She got knocked down, showed how tough she is, and yeah, I'm excited to see her go again. And then her opponent, actually, Naranjagal Sindayush from Mongolia, is an Olympian in judo, phenomenal practitioner there. So they'll be going at it. Jeslyn Michelle was a lot of fun to watch last year as well. She's back. Jackie Cataline, who we saw, she was on the brink of being an Olympian, very close to it. And she was exciting to watch last year as well. Phenomenal wrestler, very tough, very strong, a lot of potential. So, yeah, those are the women that I'm looking out for. And actually, Michelle Montague as well, out of
Yes.
New Zealand. Very tough, trains with Kayla Harrison over an American Top Team. Has kind of been this girl that loves extreme sports, from BMX, to rugby, to everything else. Now she's in mixed martial arts, wrestled in New Zealand as well. So a lot of potential out of her. I expect big things.
Yeah, the female Donald Cerrone, by the sounds of it, all her interests
Yes,
outside the cage, which is great.
exactly.
PFL obviously made a huge signing a little while back, signing Jake Paul. As someone who's been with PFL for a while, do you get the sense now that PFL is starting to get treated like much of a larger promotion now? Like obviously before there was a lot of investors and big names that you signed, but adding Jake Paul, I mean that's bigger than anything the UFC has done.
I think so. I think it was a really smart decision. Obviously, Jake Paul has been quite the force, and has been putting on some very big fights. This is a guy that already a millionaire in his own right, and he's making more millions doing it in a much more difficult fashion. So you got to respect him in that regard, and has proven me wrong repeatedly in what he's been able to do in the boxing ring. And I don't know, it looks like he may compete in mixed martial arts as well. Really curious to see how he does in that type of venue, in that type of sport. I know he's going to be training hard, and he's definitely someone you don't want to underestimate. I actually did a seminar at Westlake High School in Ohio, and up on the walls of the very impressive high school gymnasium there was Jake and Logan Paul's name out there for the wrestling credentials. Being league winners and state qualifiers and yada 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 in the wrestling world. So they're good athletes. They do have a grappling background. Clearly, they're doing well in striking as well, and I'm sure they'll find a way to put it together the best that they can for mixed martial arts.
And do you think this will also attract a younger audience? What I kind of meant there by that comment of it being a big signing for PFL compared to anything the UFC's done is because UFC struggled to get that really young audience. Jake Paul comes from the
Yeah.
YouTube generation. How much do you think that will impact the viewership as well?
Yeah, exactly, and that's the other part of it, right? Huge following, so they're going to bring in a lot of fans, I think, and I
Yeah.
think that's really smart. People forget that PFL is still new. They've only been around a few years, still establishing themselves, still fighting for that market. Obviously, it's a very different format than the UFC, but I think this was one of the smarter decisions that they could make at this stage of the game.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. If you were to advise Jake to train at a gym to learn mixed martial arts, what gym comes to mind? You've trained at a lot of great gyms over your career.
It's tough to say. I would say besides the gym, I would say get the best minds that you can, get the best mentors, best coaches that you can, then bring in the training partners yourself. If you're talking about gyms, some of the best gyms to go to, of course, American Top Team. You have TriStar in Montreal. Greg Jackson and Winklejohn in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I think they're still producing a lot of fighters over there. So there's a bunch of great camps out there where you can learn stuff. Safe Sayud in Texas.
Fortis,
yeah, a lot of great camps. Yeah,
for sure. And I think your buddy Ryan Hall as well. That would be a good mix, just with Ryan's background in the grappling and everything. I think that could be cool too. So a lot of possibilities for Jake.
Ryan's one of the most brilliant guys out there, man.
Yeah, so much so that I think most people know this, but Corey Sandhagen actually seeks out Ryan a lot of times for his camps because of how cerebral and how great he is in terms of MMA mind. But anyways, Jake, yeah, exactly. Jake Paul's boxing Tommy Fury. Do you think he wins that fight?
I think so. I certainly know that he can. He's definitely capable of winning that fight. Tommy Fury's he's a good boxer, but he's not a world beater or anything like that at this stage of the game. I think that would be a very good matchup and a competitive one for sure.
Francis Ngannou is a free agent. I know the PFL president Don Davis mentioned in an interview with Aaron Bronstetter that he's thinking of, if Francis is available and they can get him to do a tournament to determine who would fight Francis. What do you think of that idea?
It would be huge. It would be huge for the PFL, obviously. I think that'd be a big moneymaker for everyone involved. I took a lot of heat. I said, there's a few guys in the PFL's heavyweight division that I think can certainly hang with some of the best in the UFC's heavyweight division. Fabricio Verdum came over. He wasn't able to get a win in the PFL. And obviously he's a former champion in the UFC. People think you come over, I haven't heard too much about this organization. So therefore, all I watch is the UFC. They have to be, the best in the world. Well, the heavyweight division, anything can happen, first of all. The heavyweights aren't necessarily known as the most technical guys in the world. And Francis Ngannou, as good as he is and as dangerous as he is, he's not a perfect fighter. Obviously, I don't know if there is one, to be fair, but he's still learning the game. He's not a perfect grappler. But is he tough as nails? Absolutely. Can he knock out anyone in the world? Absolutely. Would he be a favorite against the winner of that tournament in the PFL? Absolutely. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it has the potential to absolutely be competitive. When you're talking about guys like Bruno Capoloza or Ante Delia, these are very dangerous guys. These are, Ante specifically is a large heavyweight, a guy who was trained with the legendary Crow Cop, who was seen and been out there and actually was recruited by the UFC. The UFC really wanted to sign him. So again, people sleep on the talent in the PFL and forget, there was other guys like Justin Gaethje who came from World Series of Fighting prior to it being PFL that came up that went all the way to having title shot in the UFC. So it's not out of the question. I think it would be huge for everyone involved. And Francis Ngannou is an amazing fighter, a deadly fighter who I'd love to see in the PFL Smart Cage.
Of course, him leaves the title vacant in the UFC. We've got Jon Jones and Ciryl Gane fighting each other. Who do you give the edge to in that fight? Because, Jon's been off for 3 years. Ciryl Gane, just the one loss to Francis. How do you see that fight playing out?
Ciryl Gane, in my mind, on a technical level, is one of the few guys that can match the fluidity, the composure, and the striking arsenal that Jon Jones tends to bring inside the UFC octagon when he's at his best. And I think this is a new challenge that excites Jon Jones. I think Jon Jones performs best when he's a little scared and when he understands that there's a very dangerous guy in front of him. That's what I think brings out the best in him. When you look at some of his performances where he had a lot of close fights and people thought he lost and yada, 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 I don't think he was really up for the challenge necessarily mentally or spiritually. Having that belt for so long and hearing these other challengers that don't have big names, that aren't really a threat to his skill set, where he can kind of get into cruise control, have an average training camp, and still go out there and smoke those guys. I think that was kind of the Jon Jones that we were seeing out there. At the heavyweight division, he understands he needs to be at his best. That one mistake could have him sleeping on the canvas. So I think it's going to be a phenomenal fight. I would still have Jon Jones as the favorite.
Mhm.
I saw him, I guess, last year, late last year, looked to be in phenomenal shape. He's had a slow progression to get to that heavyweight class. It's not like he just put on a bunch of weight in a couple months and is now trying to do this. He's had a few years to adjust to this weight, which I think is his advantage. Now, we haven't seen him compete. That's a disadvantage. I think it's always best to see a fighter stay relatively active. However, Jon Jones, he knows how to compete. He's always going to be dangerous, and I think it's going to be a phenomenal fight between him and Ciryl Gane.
What about next Saturday's title fight? Islam, Volkanovski. Who do you think comes away with the lightweight title?
Oh my gosh, this is one I'm not quite sure on. I'll do a quick breakdown, but I think Volkanovski, like a lot of people believe, is the best pound for pound fighter on the planet. The way he puts it all together, his footwork, his ability to create angles and lure you into traps, is second to none. I think he's one of the most intelligent fighters in the game, if not the most intelligent fighter in the game right now. The 145-pound division and the 155-pound division. Maybe I'm a little biased, but they are the toughest. They are the most. That's where the most technical fighters are. That's where the most depth is in those two divisions. And Volkanovski has proven himself to be pretty unbeatable. And he's fighting legends: Jose Aldo, Max Holloway, Brian Ortega. All these guys that are really dangerous in a lot of different ways. He's beating them all. He has the answers. It seems all the time. So this is a huge challenge, though, for him in Islam Makhachev. Similar to Khabib, you know exactly what he's going to do, and you can't stop him. I think he's an even better striker than Khabib Nurmagomedov. I don't think he wants to go 25 minutes on the feet with someone like Volkanovski, though. But I think where he will have the advantage is in the takedown game, with the control on the ground. He's going to have to do that with Volkanovski. If Volkanovski can consistently find an answer to stop takedowns, or at the very least get back to his feet, I think it's Volkanovski's fight. I think he's being underestimated tremendously by the bookies, by a lot of the fans out there, and experts. It is certainly a tall challenge. Islam Makhachev is the favorite for a reason, but I think people are underestimating Volkanovski because I truly believe he has a legitimate shot.
What about Khabib not being in his corner? Will that impact him?
I don't think so. I think where it could have an impact is in the training camp. Having someone to oversee your training who knows you so well, that knows how to pull it back, who knows how to push you, who knows how to verbally say the right things to you and give you the right technical feedback. There's not a whole lot of guys out there like Khabib that can do that. So to me, I think that's a disadvantage. On fight night, it matters a little bit. I don't think it's a big deal. People are making it to be a bigger deal than necessary, in my opinion. Certainly, I'm sure there's some advice that Khabib could give that could help him. But on fight night, man, you're pretty much on your own. And I hope he does have some good cornermen to give him some good advice. But I think it's more of a factor in training camp to not have him than it is on fight night.
There's one last title fight I wanted to ask you about. Usman and Edwards. Who do you see having the edge there in their trilogy fight?
You're asking all the tough questions. These are good questions, man.
Yeah.
Kamaru, it's really tough to see, what kind of adjustments he's going to make. Can he make those adjustments? Absolutely. I think he knows what he's getting himself into now with Leon Edwards. I think he's going to train harder than ever, smarter than ever. His wrestling is so tough to stop. If he's able to do that, I think it's going to be another decision for Kamaru Usman. But I think for Leon Edwards, you forget that there's a guy that won the first round. Both guys were fresh. Leon looked phenomenal in that first round, was able to get a takedown, get in the mount position, took his back, was controlling the action. On the feet, I thought he was doing a very good job, obviously. And then, in the wrestling is where he was kind of failing a little bit. So I don't know. It's hard to tell. This was a fight that took place. This first fight took place at high altitude. High altitude will do crazy things to some of the best fighters in the world. So I don't know right now if I'm leaning a certain way. I'm leaning towards Kamaru Usman due to his consistency. But maybe this is a guy in Leon Edwards that a lot of us are sleeping on. So I don't know. The one thing's for sure, he is the more technical fighter. I think he's more skilled in various areas. But again, similar to Khabib Nurmagomedov, Islam Makhachev, all those guys were more well-rounded, you could argue, than Khabib and Islam. But it didn't matter because they're so good at that one discipline that they just shut you down with their wrestling and control on the ground.
What are your thoughts on this power slap league? I was curious on that. Have you been watching it?
I have absolutely zero interest in watching a sport where you can't defend yourself and you're getting hit to the face repeatedly, causing massive brain trauma. It's not for me. I think it kind of belongs on I don't know, some kind of YouTube channel where people kind of can see that and bum fights. And, I kind of put it into that category. It's just kind of like sensationalistic violence. I don't know. There's no skill involved, really. It's just you're swinging away at someone who is unable to even flinch, let alone protect themselves. I think it's silly.
Last question before we get out of here. Jose Aldo retiring, someone that you had a chance to compete with in the cage. He's going over to boxing. How do you think he'll do in that sport?
I think he'll do great. I think that his footwork, his hand speed is still very good. Not maybe what it used to be as far as speed and power, but I still think he's a highly technical and intelligent fighter, a guy who was a real innovator in mixed martial arts. I think he'll do just fine in professional boxing. It's something I know he's been wanting to do for a very long time, has been really focusing on his boxing over the last few years when he was fighting at 135 pounds. I think he'll do fine. I don't know if he's trying to, make a run at being a champion at a certain weight, but I think he loves the challenge of it. He is another guy who I consider a true martial artist, one of the best to ever do it. It was an honor to go against him, and I wish him the best of luck.
PFL Challengers Series, week 2, February 3rd on Fubo TV, and you can also check out Kenny on the Anik and Florian podcast, one of my favorites. Kenny, thanks so much for doing this, man. Always great talking with you.
Thanks so much, man. Take care.